Welcome to the Prescription Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lynette Ewart, GP and personal trainer, bringing you health and strength without the hype. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I went to visit Diane Romano Woodward at her home and we chatted about how at age 70, she's competing as a competitive powerlifter and squatting 100 kilos, when at age 60, she was only just finding her way into the weight room. There's something in this conversation for anyone who's been trying to manage their weight, trying different types of exercise, or is unsure about how even to get started with weightlifting. Diane shares how this really can be achievable for anyone who wants to make weight training part of their life. And make sure to listen to the end because we cover some really simple principles that can help everybody who wants to age better. Enjoy. So I would love to know from you, Diane, the moment that you walked into a gym or thought about walking into the gym that started it all. Because I think life is a series of moments, isn't it? And so the rest we kind of forget. But what do you remember about that moment?
You know, I've been a member of lots of different gyms and trying to just keep myself well for a long time. So probably about mid-50s, I started trying to find a place where I would feel comfortable about doing some exercise. I was overweight and still am. But going as an overweight person into a gym can be actually quite daunting. And for that reason, it was like a pick and mix, really. I did a lot of different gyms and a lot of different trainers. I've now actually been with my trainer for 7 years. So this one seems to work for me. And we started out in a David Lloyd gym.
Right.
Because it was quite a nice place to be. And he was a trainer there. But he eventually evolved to have his own little studio, and I now train with him there. But I'm also a member of the local authority gym at Enderby, and I like to use different equipment. So it depends on what you're actually trying to achieve.
So when you started, though, what do you think, or what do you remember was your main intention?
It was to keep healthy.
Okay, had something happened? Because sometimes, I like to get this out of people that I work with and with patients. So the patient comes in and I'll say, okay, you've had this problem for such and such time, but what made you come today? And likewise, if a new client comes to me, what's happened that made you take action? Sometimes they're not sure, but often there's a series of, I don't know, events or thoughts, or they've been prompted by somebody else. Do you remember what that was?
No, I don't, to be honest with you. And it's more because I nurse myself, and technically I'm a public health nurse, that I understand the problems that are associated with obesity and that I wanted not to develop those.
Yeah.
And I think that's more of it. I think it's as my parents had got more elderly and they got health conditions, I think I recognised that were often familial tendencies towards these and that I needed to work and make sure that I didn't put myself in a position where I would have these problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's something about those decades, isn't there? Mid-40s to mid-50s where you realise it's now or never. Yeah. And that's whether that's because of older relatives or peers or people you work with. And that's for a lot of women, that's what drives them to go, okay, yeah, this isn't a rehearsal. I can't keep putting things off.
I knew I needed to do something, but I wasn't quite sure what.
Yeah.
And it was a matter of... It's very uncomfortable going into a gym for most people, particularly who are overweight. And I think women who are actually much more self-critical of their bodies, and they see other people and compare them in a way perhaps men don't. Yes, that was basically it. So
you went to David Lloyd, which you wouldn't automatically associate. I would think of, I've been in a David Lloyd, and you think of a nice environment.
Yes. Coffee shop.
Yeah, it's not kind of grunting and sweaty equipment in the hole. And so it's a very comfortable place to start.
Yes.
And there's probably not many people that end up becoming competitive powerlifters from David Lloyd. So what was the next step then in terms of that journey?
Okay, so I knew even at that stage, that was about 7-8 years ago, that I could actually lift reasonable weights for a woman of my age. And I actually, when I was identifying a trainer to work with, I wanted somebody who could teach me to lift properly, because lifting properly is the important thing. Because I look at sort of the young men ego lifters in gyms who use the brawn to actually move weight, and they are very much at risk of damaging themselves. Whereas I lift very safely. I've been taught to lift safely. And I never get backache, for example, even though I'm lifting really, really heavy weights. Competed about 10 days ago and really stretched myself there. I didn't even have to have a paracetamol the next day.
Yeah.
I knew I had used my body, but there was no pain in that respect.
Yeah.
So, yes, for me, I wanted to learn to train to lift heavy weights, but safely.
And what prompted you? So did you see somebody? So I can remember my transition into the barbell was reading a book called Thinner, Leaner, Stronger by Mike Matthews, which I still talk about and recommend. But reading that book and thinking, at that point I was still trying to manage my weight.
Yes.
And not be doing Davina DVDs and constantly just buying Slim Fast or whatever crap is out there. But this book, there was a moment that I thought, I've been wasting my time in the gym doing a bit on the treadmill, because he talked about why women need to be lifting heavy weights in rep ranges of 3 to 7, not 10 to 12 to 15.
Right.
And so that was my moment. And then on the back of that, I heard somebody on his podcast talk about the starting strength method and it being the most efficient way to get as strong as possible. And if you're as strong as possible, the rest becomes easy. So it was a book that kind of brought it to me as such. But so you were into David Lloyd, and somehow you must have seen the weights, and I'm just wondering where it came together.
I mean, I have been to different gyms and been with different trainers, and they've all encouraged me to lift.
Oh, okay.
And so I wasn't new in David Lloyd. As you progress, you like lifting heavy weights. I like the feeling of lifting heavy weights.
Yeah.
I like the feeling of having good tone, and therefore it's something that you continue.
Yeah.
Some people don't like lifting heavy weights, and that's fine. And you don't have to lift heavy weights.
Yeah.
And it's very few women who are going to be able to do that. So I was with my trainer, Dave, and we were doing just the sort of normal things that a woman, bear in mind, he's a personal trainer. He's not going to put me into any circumstance where he thinks I'm going to be injured. No. Because he would lose his business that way.
Yeah. It's not a good advert to go around battering people.
So he's making sure I'm lifting safely, but lifting reasonable weights.
Yeah.
And then I decided to go to university. I was sort of semi-retired, got to retirement age, decided to do a master's degree. And the university where I went, which was Nottingham Trent University, happened to have a powerlifting club. So I really wanted to have the full student experience. And so I thought, well, I'll join a club. Yeah. And so I joined a powerlifting club, and I was welcomed there. Because I was training with a lot of powerlifters, they could see by the fact that I was lifting. If you lift rather quickly, if you can get the weight up quickly, you can add more weight, basically. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they were saying, you can lift more than you're lifting now. And so we gradually worked on that with my trainer, Dave, because he knew I wanted to do this. Yeah. And so then we got to the stage where because of in the university, it's called BUCS, which is British University Sports or something like that. I did the sports competition with all the other 20-year-olds. And because there were only 3 people in my group, I came third. So I got a medal. Hooray! Yeah. And that, just going into a competitions themselves are an experience in themselves. And if you like a bit of dopamine hit, they are it. Absolutely. Yeah. So the competition was great to be part of, and I got a medal. So I just sort of continued from there.
Okay. And here we are now with it becoming what you do, very much. Yes. What you do.
It is. Okay. It's part of my life. I perceive myself to be a powerlifter.
So do you think if it hadn't been the timing of going to Nottingham Trent and seeing the club, it may have all gone in a different direction, perhaps?
I'm fairly certain that's the case. Because there's no obvious route for me to go into competitive powerlifting as just an individual.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the way it happens, isn't it? A series of doors open and you find yourself going, okay, well, why not? Why not just see where this leads?
And a lot of young people, particularly when they go to university, they will do powerlifting while they're at university, and then it drifts off once they get in the real world. Yeah. I think it's about being in the real world sort of thing. If you have the demands of a full-time job, and when I had a full-time job, I was doing my sessions at 7:30 in the morning, so I'd be ready to be at work for 9 o'clock. Yeah. I had to try to fit around like that.
And do you remember when you started, before the competition side, took on its own momentum? Do you remember whether you had to push yourself to embed that habit, or do you feel like it came quite easily?
No, remember, I don't think exercise is easy. I like going and training with my trainer, but if I try to do anything else, and I do try to do other things, then I have to really persuade myself to do it still.
Yeah.
Yes. So if like my trainer's been on holiday for 2 weeks, I can't train at his gym. I've gone to the local gym and I've done an aqua aerobics class, and I've just done some free weights because that's what I like doing. Yeah. I would always prefer to lift a barbell than do anything else in the gym.
Yeah.
It's just what I like doing. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And because I know one of the things I say to some of the ladies that I'm working with is it's going to feel hard at first. Yes. Any new habit is going to feel hard, and you're not always going to love it. But there is a point at which something clicks, I think. And whether that's because you start to feel stronger, you do something in the day that makes you go, oh, actually, that was a bit easier. Yes. Or you notice something in the mirror that something's changing, and then that starts to carry you through and keep you coming back. But it's the hard bit, I think, is the space in between where it feels like all effort, like beginning a diet. The first 3 days can be murder.
Yes.
But I think you can apply that to anything. Learning an instrument, at first. I remember learning guitar and it hurts your fingers. So I think helping people to remember that, to expect it to be hard when you begin, but remember why you started.
Yes.
I think is works well.
And I certainly am enthusiastic about going to the training with my trainer, and I book my appointments with him a month in advance so that I have them there ready. They are the priority actually for me to actually do that bits of training. Then I would, as I'm virtually always have been trying to lose weight. I think I started dieting when I was 13, so that's about, I'm 70 now, 57 years ago. On and off, I've been dieting all of that time. About, I would say, 10 years ago, I decided not to diet in the sort of slimming type session.
The traditional sense.
Yes, you know what I mean. Because as most people who lived a bit of life and tried this, you can lose the weight, but you put it back on.
Yeah.
That's just the way your body seems to be. And also, if you haven't changed your lifestyle and what you're eating, then that it's just going to come back on. It's just the same. It's the same. You're coming back to the same. Yes.
Do you feel then you've reached a stage where you could safely say you're not dieting anymore, or has the focus of it changed?
It's one after you get to 65, I believe the sort of body mass index is an odd thing anyway.
Yeah.
But body mass index when you're over 65 is not particularly relevant, because it's actually more protective, I understand, to have a slightly higher BMI as you're 65, because you can see lots of very slim, frail old people who have the BMI that's in the range that they might like for a younger person, but they can't get out of a chair. Yeah. Whereas my BMI is definitely higher than would be. I'm obese according to that, and because of BMI such as a vague thing. It doesn't take
good for populations, isn't it?
Yes,
if you're talking about a big population, BMI is the best we've got.
But it doesn't take into account whether the weight is muscle or the weight is fat, and a lot of me is muscle. When you start thinking about body mass index, and bear in mind I am a nurse, so it's been drummed into me. When you start thinking so much about that, and actually thinking about the healthy lifestyle and thinking about what you're eating, but not thinking about it in terms of necessarily the calorie value. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So when I am trying to eat, I am looking very much at mainly trying to get protein in. That's where I'm really focused, and I'm super focused on that because I'm a vegetarian, and it's not easy for me to get a lot of protein in. Okay. So I have to, if I want to get sort of protein, I try to get about 125 grams a day in. Okay. At least, and that. I will have to have a good source of protein at each 3 meals, but I will have to have a protein source for my snacks as well. Yeah. And so I'm a great advocate of Lidl's chocolate protein puddings because I love them.
They're great, aren't they?
You get a little bit of chocolate there, you know what I mean? It's a pudding, but you actually get 20 grams of protein as well. Yeah. So I have to, if I'm trying to build muscle, or even just focusing on trying to eat healthily, will really focus on the protein.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up protein, because it's really important, especially if you're a competitive powerlifter. And I'd like to come on to how you organize your food and your thoughts around food, particularly with competitions in mind in a sec. But just as a baseline, I find when I work with new clients, initially I'll get them to just track what they're eating, to get an idea of how much protein are you getting in. And invariably it always sits between about 50 to 60 grams. Occasionally, if somebody's already perhaps heard some content online and they're paying attention to it, it might be 80. And when I say to them, right, I want you to start aiming for at least about 100 grams a day. You'll probably fall short of it, but let's try and pitch for that. Guaranteed within a week, people will go, oh gosh, yeah, I'm really having to think about that.
Okay.
And I know that there's lots of people who, certain, media famous people who will stand up and say, that's ridiculous, you don't need that much protein. But I would argue for women, for general life in the second half of life, to minimize muscle loss, and maintain good health, you need to be eating more than 50 grams of protein a day.
Absolutely agree. And I think the muscle mass loss and that bone density loss, those two are that really drive me to keep going and to do what I do. Is because I'm not worried about muscle loss, because I know what to do about it.
Yes.
If I had an accident today, I probably got enough muscle to carry me over for a few weeks.
Your muscle bank account is very healthy.
But you do see people struggle to get out of a chair without pushing themselves up.
Yeah.
And kind of there's the thigh muscles particularly, and now I believe the calf muscles they're thinking about in terms of cardiovascular risk, having a diameter of your calf muscles, because you can just see that people who haven't got musculature, they cannot get out of a chair, cannot move, cannot exercise, and so the increased risks greatly.
Yeah. And people slowly seem to, they just start adapting. This is what I tend to point out. Before you know it, you're pushing off of something, or you're grabbing a handle, or you park a bit closer. And it's those subtle things that I think I try and draw people's attention to. But just coming back to protein then, because I do work with some ladies who are vegetarian and they find it a struggle. Yes. And what I will often say to them is, you don't need to fix this in a week. It's a process. And so in terms of how you've gradually adapted your diet, give us a flavour of how long that took and where some of the easier changes stuck and where it was a bit more tricky.
I think it's just focusing on protein and actually looking at maybe have fewer carbohydrates, because if you're filling up on bread, you're not going to be filling up on something else. And if you eat your protein first in a meal, and then you can, once you've got that bit in, you'd have to have whatever carbohydrates you then feel need to get you full. But I think just our diets generally, these are higher in carbohydrates, which you need them, you know what I mean? They're not demons, but you really want to focus on the protein first. So it's actually about thinking about your meal, and even the meal you have in front of you, eating the protein first.
And building the meal around the protein as well, I would tend to say.
Incorporating, we don't eat a lot of beans, lentils and stuff like that, but I have tins of them in my kitchen ready, absolutely, so that I could grab them. Do you know what I mean? And they have to be in your cupboard in order for you to be able to use them. So, again, Lidl is a great place to buy those, 50 pence, 60 pence a tin. And you can get there's loads of different beans and lentils and things like that. You can get ready made. If you either have cost implications but you do have the time, you can actually then soak. We've got dried chickpeas that we can soak and boil. That takes a little more effort. But if you do enough, then you can just put some in the freezer or whatever. You know what I mean? So thinking a little bit about buying in the foods that have high protein, and actually, if you wanted to go along the sort of lentils and things route, is to actually maybe see if you're thinking the night before about what you're going to eat, and then soaking them overnight. Low-fat cottage cheese, or any cottage cheese really, I get the cheapest. It doesn't matter to me whether it's low-fat or not.
Same. I'm quite stingy, so price always dictates,
and so whatever's, for me, the lowest price cottage cheese I will get, that's great. And in the United States, I'm from the United States originally, a meal is cottage cheese with 2 peach halves. That's a meal. Do you know what I mean? And so I will eat cottage cheese in that respect, but it's also really good. I find cottage cheese is if you're going to bed, and it's always good, I think, to have some protein just before you go to bed, because it just keeps you satiated, and your sleep's not disturbed as such by feeling hungry and the like. But so a couple of spoonfuls of cottage cheese at that time is really good. It's easy. It's easy. Just have it. Go to bed.
Yeah. And what about eating as a family? How much has wanting to prioritize protein had an impact on the people around you that you eat with?
Well, at the moment it's only me and my hubby. With our son's visits quite a bit. My husband's also vegetarian. And we brought their sons up vegetarian, although they now eat meat. So it's we both cook. And we both would sort of. I don't think my husband is as focused on protein as I am. But
he's not a competitive powerlifter.
But he's not. He's getting out in the garden a lot. He's actually very active. He was cycling around Italy early this year. Do you know what I mean? He'd just take a cycle on the airplane, and then he'll get where he goes, and he'll cycle around and from hotel to hotel. So we're both health conscious. I'm just trying to think in terms of other things to do with protein the way I do it. Eggs.
I was going to say, apart from cottage cheese, is there much dairy that you rely upon? What about protein shakes? Because I get asked about protein powders all the time.
Do you know what? I don't use them really at all.
Really?
Yeah. And they are certainly a very useful thing. But I just... I would, if I used them, I wouldn't make a shake. I would probably stir them into something, like yogurt or something like that. But they're very useful. But I don't use them at all.
You've not used them. That's really interesting, because a lot of people would feel. I've got some people who say, I just don't want to use powders. That's fine. Don't use them. It's entirely possible to manage it with food, and probably better. But they are convenient sometimes. I find I can buy cheaper yogurt and then make up the protein content by stirring some protein powder through.
I only use a sort of like basically a plain Greek yogurt, because the other ones have, even the fruity yogurts have quite a bit of sugar in generally. My family has a tendency towards diabetes, and so I am battling not to become diabetic. I have a thyroid problem. And so I see an endocrine specialist every 6 months, and we really very carefully look at this and really prevent it, because diabetes is a slippery slope to all sorts of health issues and basically feeling unwell. And when you start feeling unwell, then you don't really want to sort of exercise and the like. So trying to prevent from becoming diabetic by really keeping an eye on what I eat. And focusing on protein.
And so let's just talk a little bit about weight, because you effectively compete in a sport that has a weight class. So even if weight isn't your primary goal, it's something you will have to think about and no doubt make adjustments to your diet. And I'd be interested to know what your journey has been with the scale, because I do try quite hard to help people to detach from the emotion of the scale and see it more as a number in the way that men tend to do, but we struggle much more for all sorts of cultural reasons. But when so if it's part of your sport, it has a value and it has a priority to some extent. So what's been your journey with that, and how have you kind of managed it? Because I'm sure it's had its own course that's interesting to hear about.
Well, with competitive powerlifting, the heavier you are, the more you're expected to lift. And so they do a sort of calculation of points or dots or whatever it is. So if somebody who was competing against me weighed in the lower category, we lifted the same thing, they would win. Because I'm expected to be able to lift more. I started 66 on 87 kilos, which was very, very overweight, and managed to get down after about a year. And it's sort of deliberate trying to get into a particular weight category, but also I know this is just better for me to be lower in weight. I then, 87 kilos, I've then managed to get down this time last year, to 75, minus 75, 74 point something kilos, which is the next weight category. But in order to do that, and I really had to, we didn't like do an 800 calorie diet or anything like that. We did it long term, but consistently for 4 or 5 months. You know what I mean? It's just chipping away at it. But on the day of the competition, and this is true of a lot of powerlifters, is that when you're trying to just make sure you're in the right category, I didn't have any food for 24 hours before and no fluids for 12 hours before in order to make that just below 75 kilos. And I could tell you that's not a good place to be when you're just going to go into a competition and do a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah.
So I would rather lift in a heavier category without doing that sort of manipulation than happen to be in the lower category. But I've worked my way down, as I say, from minus 90 category to the minus 82.5 and lifted there for quite a while. Then, let's say, this time last year got back to minus 75, but only for one competition, and then it's kept back up.
Yeah. Do you feel that you've managed to emotionally detach from what your weight says, what that number says, or are there ghost emotions lurking there?
No, not at all. The weight as such, the numbers on the scale don't really have an impact on me in that respect.
Yeah.
It is just the relationship to Earth's gravitational pull. Yes. Yeah. What I see is the abdomen. If I get fat up on my abdomen, then I know I've got too much weight on. Yes. Yeah. But I weigh myself consistently pretty much every day. I think there's only been 1 week when I haven't weighed myself every day. Yeah. And the value of that is, one, you just see how much it fluctuates with what's going on around you in your life. The days you train, the next day you'll probably weigh heavier a little bit. Yes. If you have a lot of carbohydrates the day before, you'll probably be a little bit heavier. If you don't have enough fluids, you'll retain fluids, and so you will weigh heavier. So one of the things that's really important to do is to drink a lot. Drink a lot of water or whatever it is you want to drink, because otherwise you will retain fluid. That seems perverse, but that is how it works. And if you do weigh yourself every day, you can see these patterns emerging. Yeah. The people around you will advise you that this is what's going to happen. And you think, well, yes, they're actually right. But it's nothing to do with my value as a human being. Yeah. It's just what I've eaten and drunk and what I've done in the last few days.
Yeah. Presumably, as you were learning all of this, I would imagine your coaches had to remind you quite a bit to stick with the process, or did you take to it and were able to emotionally detach from it quite easily?
I think because I had decided some time ago that I was no longer going to diet in the conventional Western sense, is that nothing is asked of me. I can take 2,000 calories a day, and I can actually gradually lose weight on 2,000 calories a day. Yeah. Where, because I have a lot of muscle mass, and muscle mass uses a lot of energy. Okay? So the more muscle you get, the more you can eat, which is really nice.
Yes, you're building the engine. That's what I liken it to. You're building an engine. Nice. But actually, you've made me think that. Give us an idea then for people who are listening. What does your training look like? What do you do? What's your minimum per week? And how does that change then when you're building for a competition as a general rule? How often and how long are you in the gym?
I always train 3 times a week, no matter where it is with regards to the competition.
Okay.
And even the week before a competition, you are not to lift heavy. You're meant to be sort of resting. But I will go to the gym with my trainer, and he will put me through very light work. Okay, so I'll consistently always go 3 times a week to be with my trainer to train.
Do you go on the same days?
No.
Okay.
No, and that depends on family life.
Okay.
It, you know what I mean? And we're all. It's the whole person, isn't it?
Yes. Oh yeah.
I tend to train on a Wednesday evening and a Saturday morning because one of my sons can come with me, and I really like that. You know what I mean? We train together, but I will try to put it in my diary, and I can do 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I do 4 o'clock in the evening. Sometimes I do 6 o'clock, and that's really interesting as well because you can. I actually think I lift better in the afternoon. Not the evening, but the afternoon. My last competition, we didn't start the competition until 4:45 at night, and I was deadlifting at 9 o'clock at night. That was extremely hard.
I bet, yeah.
I was trying to stay awake. I was slapping my face between lifts to try to actually just keep awake. But you can lift. You can do anything at any time of the day. It just has to fit around your lifestyle.
Yeah.
So if you're at work from 9 to 5, that it is you can train either before or after. Not everybody is a morning person. I am a morning person that I can get up at 6 o'clock without any difficulty whatsoever. Yeah.
And so, what would you typically do in a session? What does a session look like for you?
So this particular trainer, and he does it with all of his clients, with his 4 clients, up to 4 clients at a time. we will all be doing the same thing. So if it's a squat day, we'll be doing some exercises to warm up those particular muscles and explosive things and things like that. But depending on each individual, their state of health, any injuries they've got, and what their capability is, they will be using different pieces of equipment.
Okay.
Or they could just be body weight, or they could be using a lightweight, or they could be using a heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm probably using heavier weights than most of the people in the class.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's a matter of getting a good trainer.
Yeah.
This is so essential to get, even if you can't afford to have it 3 times a week, once a week, get them to teach you stuff, how to do things right, and then you can replicate that by yourself. But the good trainer you'll learn things on how to prepare yourself for myself, particularly lifting heavy weights.
So do you know what your training is going to look like for the whole week, or do you turn up your trainer will know, but would they program you for a block of training, or do you just turn up and be led by the session?
He will concentrate on one of the major pushing and pullings. Push and pull, what you're going to do. So I would generally manage to get a squat, a bench, and a deadlift session in the week.
Okay.
But if it doesn't, sometimes you do what do you call it? Putting it above your head, don't you?
Overhead
things
press,
like that. Overhead press. That's the word. Yes, I don't do it very often. That's why I don't know the name of it. But I mean, if it's that's fine, because it's all gonna keep you well. I happen to like to do particular 3 different lifts that are part of powerlifting. But there are lots of the other people who are there are generally just there to actually keep themselves well. Yes?
Okay, so you're in a setting with people who aren't remotely interested in competing, but your training is still adapted for you, so that you're ready to go and work up to a meet when it's there. Okay.
So then, and you have periods where, at the moment now, I hope not to be competing till about February.
Right.
That's my thought process. So that's about 6 months.
Yeah.
So this is now we're doing more general strength and conditioning rather than specifically on the lifts themselves.
Yeah. I think the people I've worked with, my barbell clients, I think that's the biggest thing that they have to get to grips with. Because when you start barbell training, it's great because every session you can put a little bit more on the bar and you can have this lovely line and this curve that goes up and up. But that's always going to flatline at some point.
Yes.
You can't just keep getting stronger and stronger. You'll get injured, you'll get ill, and it's just naturally you will reach that point in the curve. And that, I think, is where having a coach sometimes really comes into its own, because how do you then stay involved, stay motivated? Because like you've said already, it's a great buzz when you feel yourself getting stronger.
Yes.
But it's managing the plateaus and sometimes the dips in training and the injuries.
Yes.
I mean, presumably you've had experience of an injury along the way.
Yeah, I had a significant hamstring injury last year. So I was seeing a physiotherapist who told me only to lift in competitions 80% of what I usually lift.
Right.
So I was that year. It was still a good year, but I was not going to be breaking even my own records, let alone anybody else's. Yes.
Yeah.
It was just go there, turn up. The competitions are still nice, great to be with powerlifters. They're a happy breed generally.
Yeah.
And but I was not going to even. I was less than the what I'd lifted the year before, and you have to come to terms with that. It's about a long-term thing. All sorts of things are about the long-term thing, aren't they? It's not about every day something exciting happening. It's just putting in the effort and you'll get the results.
Yeah. And I remember clearly my own coach saying to me that most of your training will be routine and be bored, and it's being okay with that.
Yes.
And sometimes you do have to pull back when you're not very well.
But I mean, the most important thing is consistency.
Yeah.
It's just turning up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are days where you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
And if you've got a good trainer, they know you, or they will certainly ask questions. How are you today? What's going on? And they will be able to judge how much they can ask of you that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's the benefits of having a trainer.
Yeah. And you outsource the thinking and the accountability. And I often say to people, don't expect to feel motivated all the time. I mean, motivated to go to work half the time.
Yeah,
but
that's right, yeah.
The consequences of not going mean whatever you move, you get up and you go. And
that's right. And so, as I say, consistency, just getting up and doing it.
Yeah.
It's not going to be all whistles and bells all the time. you will find yourself that you just know in yourself that you are stronger and you can do things. I think sort of talking about just being able to handle your 10-kilo luggage.
Yeah.
I actually just do it with one hand now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then being able to put it up into the overhead rack without struggling. That's a real achievement. And if you can get to that stage, that's great. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's really something that's doable, not on a daily basis because we're not flying daily. But you know what I mean? But it's an everyday occurrence.
Yeah.
And you will feel that.
Yeah, I sometimes use you're getting the Christmas tree out of that awkward cupboard at the end of the year, and just notice next year that you should be able to do that a little bit easier and stabilize it. I think stabilizing things, I will have everybody practice, an overhead press to some extent, even if it's just with water bottles. Because it's great to be able to stabilize things above your head. And like you've said, pushing and pulling, things that we do every day. It doesn't really matter. You don't really need to do sit-ups. And we can come on to what other stuff you sometimes add in. But actually, if you've only got a short amount of time to train, get the stuff that matters, that mimics those movement patterns that you're using every day in life and want to keep using and preserving.
I think there was a television advert, and I can't remember what it was from, but it was an elderly man sort of doing that sort of thing. And what he wanted to do was to be able to lift his granddaughter up to put the star on the top of the Christmas tree.
Yes.
And that was the ultimate aim.
Yeah.
And it was great just to see that progression.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. Think about what it is you would like to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually hold that. So those mornings when it's dark and you don't want to get up and you want to train, remember why it's there. Do you do, you said while your trainer was off, you've done some other things. Are they regularly part of what you do? How much do you think about, cardio or conditioning work and that kind of thing?
I don't do a lot of cardio. That's actually a habit of powerlifters, I think. It is as part of the breed, I think. People who drift into powerlifting are perhaps not keen on cardio. I mean, I've done the sort of step classes and stuff back in the day. Do you know what I mean? I did it. I don't now do that sort of work, and I've tried things like body pump at classes, but I've got injured doing body pump because of the rapid movements, which are not they're not good. Yes. Yeah. It's a fun class, i.e. it's nice to be joining into it, but actually in terms of taking care of yourself, it doesn't work for me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I would agree, and it's probably why we're having this conversation. But as I said to you earlier, if that's something somebody does and they would otherwise do nothing, then choose your thing and keep doing it. And I think one of the things I've said to people is I don't prioritize conditioning work or cardio. In fact, this week I've dragged myself for a very pathetic run twice, only because when we were on holiday, my 17-year-old was flying up the hills and I thought, I'm not as fit as I think I am. So anyway, but
it's true. It's true. I mean, I was in Granada in June, and it's very hilly, and I walked up to the Alhambra, and I was like stopping every 100 yards and panting, whereas younger people were actually just managing to walk all the way up the hill. Yeah. Now, I am 70 years old, and I'm not 30 years old, and I recognize that, but I don't let it limit me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Hardly.
I don't do things that I think might hurt myself. Because I know it's going to take a hell of a lot longer for me to recover than it is a 30-year-old person.
Well, I think your baseline and where you would want to get back to consider yourself recovered would be a high baseline, wouldn't it, as well? But one of the things I will still maintain, I've got a bike, I'm a fair weather cyclist, and it doesn't come out in the winter because I haven't got the right gear. But I do lift heavy weights over the winter, and I can get that bike out in the spring and comfortably do an hour with a few hills. I wouldn't say it's not, it's nothing impressive, but it's not hell.
Yes.
And I think that if you're lifting regularly and if you're bothered about measuring what your heart rate does, it still counts.
Yes.
Okay, I know there's lots of talk in nerd circles about zone 2 cardio. I'm not going to get into all of that. But lifting weights is still a cardiovascular training stimulus as well. And I would say, again, my bias is that if you're going to choose something to do, you can get double bang for your buck if you're prepared to put the work in with a weight training session.
My heart rate very definitely goes up when I train.
Yeah.
Yes. And I sort of have an idea about where, before I attempt the next lift, is where I want my heart rate to be.
Yeah.
I wear one of these watches. Do you know what I mean? That tells me my heart rate. In powerlifting anyway, you tend to have quite a bit of period of time between you only do one lift, and then you're probably 10 minutes before you do the next lift.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's naturally a lot of gaps there because of the way powerlifting competitions are run. But if I'm in the gym and training, I will have longer rests than most people, and it's not because I'm 70 years old. It's because what I'm asking my body to do.
Yeah.
And you do need some time to recover for that.
Yeah. And I think, not even just in competitions, my own experience is that if you're working in that top zone of your strength capacity, you need that rest to be able to get the next set completed and hold your form together. So, and that's a big adjustment, isn't it, when you start heavy weight training, is getting used to the rest times, especially if you've come from a circuit or a boot campy type thing. When I was coaching in person in Rutland, and I was encouraging people to do a set and then have a rest, you could see them getting fidgety and not knowing what to do. We had to put grippy things out, give them something to do to stop them rushing through it. But
I actually sit down on a bench for a period of time. Maybe a minute or 2 minutes or something like that. But I'm actually sitting and resting between these very heavy lifts. I'm going back to the sort of the aerobic things. It does occur to me that I was walking up a hill in Granada trying to get to Alhambra, and I wasn't going as fast as other people. But I'm still 70 years old, and I was walking up the hill.
Yeah, you were doing it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I didn't think I'll take the bus this time.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I knew I needed to get there. I knew I would probably need to take longer than what the sort of what the maps thing told me it would take to walk up there.
Yeah.
But I was still walking up the hill.
Yeah. And equally, I would say, if you look hard enough, you'll find a 70-year-old marathon runner that might have flew up that hill, but they wouldn't be putting a barbell on their back, because the reality is, for most of us living normal lives and not being paid to do this, we can only fit so much in and around the rest of the things that we're doing. You've done a master's degree in various things. So so it's choosing stuff that you can stick to and that has some value. I know people would be interested to know if you take any supplements, because supplements get a lot of attention, more than they deserve, in my opinion. But
I'm on vitamin D simply because that's prescribed, because I was low in vitamin D, as is most of the British population between October and April, I suspect. I take iron tablets because of my vegetarian diet. I don't have a great deal of iron coming in. I have never taken iron tablets throughout my life. I think I only took them once in pregnancy because I don't take generally don't take supplements, and I didn't need them. But as I say, I see an endocrine specialist, and he suggested that, and so I do, and that's fine. It works for me. I'm a blood donor. My blood is good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to be. Else they don't let you in the door. Yeah.
And that's great. I think we need to just look at every little bit and keep ourselves healthy. So I take iron tablets, and in order to help the absorption of the iron, I take vitamin C.
Okay.
So I don't take vitamin C for colds and flu or something like that. I really take it to help the absorption of the iron. Yeah. I do take magnesium. That's sort of in the last year, I'd say. Now I think I was taking it because I heard it helped with sleep. I generally don't have problems with sleep.
Okay.
Creatine is taken for muscle supplementation, and I certainly do have it. And it seems to be considered to be a very safe thing to take. Yep. And it is effective. But I can't say that I take it regularly. That's probably just not gotten into the habit of that yet.
I agree. I endorse it. Well, I say endorse it in that it's the one supplement I'm willing to say there is good evidence that this will do you good and probably no harm, but I just can't remember to take it. It's right by the coffee machine.
And it's not only about muscles. I think it's actually thinking about your brain health as well. It's actually quite important and quite useful. Yeah. Do I take anything else? A B6, I think it is. Again, this has been advised by my specialist. Not because I'm deficient in any way, but this is just for maintaining general health.
But it doesn't sound like you've succumbed to any of the more gym bro things, because that is a minefield and people make a lot of money selling things like pre-workout, post-workout, fat burners and all of that, which personally I think it's all unnecessary.
No, I don't.
But if you hang around gyms long enough, somebody will start telling you.
Oh God, yes, and I think that the pre-workouts, a cup of coffee will probably do it. Yeah. Yes, you need a bit of caffeine to sort of get you really stimulated, and that's about it. Yeah. That's all I would take in that respect.
Yeah, same.
So no, the supplements I do take are really just designed for general health.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. That's good to know, because as I say, it creates a lot of noise and a lot of distraction. And my worry is people get caught up in the supplements and don't do the work. They're not actually doing the lifting.
And I would say, look at what you're eating.
Yeah.
Because if I'm vegetarian and it's difficult to get iron in a vegetarian diet, if you're eating meat, you probably wouldn't need iron supplements.
Yeah.
So don't buy the iron supplements.
Yeah.
Get your better foods that have the iron in them, and do it that way.
Yeah. So to round off, really, what would you say to people who are worried or not worried, or who are telling themselves it's too late to make a start now, or it's really not worth it, or they're worried about getting injured? Because here you are, and could you just share the numbers that you lifted in your recent competition?
Right.
Context.
So my squat was 100 kilos.
Amazing.
Bench was 62.5.
More than me, so I weigh 60 kilos. So
my deadlift's 130 kilos.
Fabulous.
Okay. I didn't start competing until I was 66. I really didn't start lifting heavily until I was about 60. And I didn't do it because I wanted to be a competitive powerlifter.
Yeah.
I did it because I realized I needed to maintain muscle mass particularly, but bone density as well.
Yeah.
Okay. As we get older, we have to fight that component of aging by actually doing some sort of resistance work. And it doesn't have to be lifting heavy weights. It can be just moving your body.
Yeah.
Body weight squats are fantastic.
Yeah.
They do some lunges around the living room. Do you know what I mean? It can just be body weight type stuff. Most people get injured at some stage. I was concerned that I wouldn't get back to, but I'm now lifting pretty much what I was lifting before I was injured in terms of my hamstring.
Yeah,
and I still lifted. I didn't stop lifting. It didn't incapacitate me.
Yeah.
It's just that you have to listen to the people you pay to give you advice, right? You're paying them to give you advice, and listen to it.
Yeah.
Okay. And follow their advice, whether it's your trainer, physiotherapist, or whatever. And they know they have experience with this, and they will help you to get back to where you want to be.
Yeah. I think it's very hard to navigate your own way around injuries, because you lean into the better days and you tend to overdo it. And then you can catastrophize on the days when it's a bit more sore. So you need somebody to be removed from that and say, no, you don't overdo it just because you're feeling better today. And I'm speaking from experience of how rubbish I am at navigating my own injuries. But there is generally a way around it. I think if you're systemically unwell, if you're down with the flu, you need to pause and you need to recover because your body's already in a stress state. But if you've got a knee pain, you've got another good leg and a couple of good arms that you can still work with.
And again, it's about turning up. You can do something. Well, when I had the hamstring issue, what we did was, we didn't have me deadlifting from the floor. We had the bar with the barbells on several blocks.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't having to reach down as far and to pull up so far.
Yeah.
And there are ways of modifying things so that you can still exercise, which is really important to keep that muscle tone going.
Yeah.
Even if you're injured.
Yeah. And I think it keeps the habit as well. That's what I'll say to people. Yes. So even if your back's hurting, let's find something that you can keep that space in your week, because if that gets filled with something else, you've got that uphill push to try and get back into things again.
And also, as I say, with my trainer, I mean, when he'll be behind me when I'm doing a squat with a heavy weight on my back, I will be, for example, shifting to one leg because I have an injury I didn't even know about. He says, you're moving differently.
Yeah.
The other week, I started almost like grunting when I was lifting. And he said, you haven't made that noise before. There's something different. And so when you have somebody who's an expert at looking at people, looking at the way people move, and actually knows you well, you learn so much.
Yeah. And gosh, that's true of so many things, that sometimes getting another pair of eyes on how you move, how you feel, how you speak about things, can pay you back enormously. What would you say to somebody who's still sitting on the fence about starting? They're maybe coming up to retirement and they're thinking, I really ought to do something about this. What's your one thing to get them to go from thinking about it to action?
Well, it's your body. You have a responsibility for it.
Yeah.
Only you can do this.
Yeah.
Again, it's very important to have your head in the right space. you can't do a powerlifting competition without your head in the right space. Do you know what I mean? So you have to work on your thoughts, and you do have to make it a priority. And as I say, for me, I put my dates in the diary a month in advance, just so that they are there. Yeah, I can move it if something really exciting comes up.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I have three dates in the diary that I'm going to every week that I'm going to train. Is you just have to start. You just have to put one foot in front of the other. That's it.
Yeah.
Really.
Take the first step. Yeah.
And don't expect wonderful things quickly. But if you're persistent, then you will notice the change.
Yeah.
Things will change.
Yeah. Consistency is everything. It really is. It's absolutely everything, as I repeat on a loop. So thank you, Diane. That's great. That's wonderful. I really appreciate your time. And I think people are going to get a lot of value from your experience, and you're inspirational.
I just think it's so important, particularly for women, and for particularly women who have, from puberty probably, not really felt that doing exercise was for them because they weren't the right shape or whatever, or they had demands of family. Kind of all of these things coming first, is actually make some time for yourself.
Yeah.
And actually, prepare your body, because it's going to keep you going for a long time.
Yeah.
And if you don't prepare it, then you might not have a long time.
Yeah. And I tend to close my newsletter with this. It is really the greatest thing you'll ever own. And I would say it's the only thing you ever own, because all the other stuff that we value gets left behind. And this is the only thing that's coming with you when you're done. So treasure it and look after it. And I think be grateful that you get to do this, I think, because, as a doctor, I meet so many people who that opportunity's gone and it's too late, and they're left with regret. And that's a bitter pill to have to swallow.
Yes.
Good stuff. Thank you very much.
Cheers.